Thank you, Bara. Hey, guys. Welcome to this afternoon talk that will be a little bit different because it's a piece of psychology. I'm a designer and a psychologist, and what I do is helping companies with major transformation projects, mainly concerning company culture or leadership or maybe conflict management. And being a designer and dealing with major challenges, I have to search for new theories and new tools all the time that are useful for individuals and companies. And I would like to introduce you to one theory that really helps me and that changed my life and helped to change many lives in people's lives and in lives of organizations I work for, and it's the time perspective. Before I present the entire concept to you, I would like to ask you a question. So there is the first poll. When you imagine your life and the time you have in your life, what are the areas you hardly ever have time for, enough time for? Please vote. You know, many people would say that, of course, it's leisure, it's the free time, but we differ in the way how we deal with time. And this is how Phil Zimbardo, the author of the time perspective theory, actually found out that there is such a thing. You know, how people talk about time, how they mention it, what language they use, how they speak about, oh my God, I'm not having enough time for, or, my time is like this. This is how he noticed that people speak about time differently and they refer to it in a different way. So I'm really curious, what are the things you don't have enough time for in your life? We will see if your answers match the usual.
So we have a few answers. Let's look at them.
Okay.
People are voting. People are still voting right now.
And it's pretty uh, dynamic. Okay.
So I would say that
Remember,
exercising and fun is fighting for the first place.
exercising and fun. Remember this. Maybe you will understand the correlation between what you've answered and your time perspective. And it will be interesting to see if the results of your very own time perspective somehow reflect what you've just answered. Thank you. Thank you for a very active participation in this first poll. You will see how it relates to our topic. So, what is the time perspective? How to explain it? How to put it in a simple way? Imagine it this way. Each and every one of us was born with three invisible packages, three invisible backpacks on your back. One is the backpack with your past, one is the one with your present, one is the one with your future. What does it mean? Well, you store different kind of experiences in each backpack and you visit it, you enter it at different times to get inspiration and draw some materials from it. In other words, the time perspective is a subjective manner how you interpret time and how you divide it into categories. It's a subjective thing. The time perspective is partially inborn, partially it reflects your upbringing, how you were brought up, and partially it's a result of your choices. Your time perspective, which means how you navigate through the past, through the present, and through the future, is influenced by the climate zone you come from, by the religion, by whether you experienced a stable family background or not, by education and other influences. And the time perspective is a secret pattern you have, and it's a subconscious pattern. You are not aware of it. And the time perspective makes you focus on one of the time zones more than the others. So we all have the time zones. We all have the past. We all have the present. We all have the future in us. But the time perspective is a pattern, is a system how you move between the zones. Where do you live more? Where do you live less? And from which time zone you make your everyday decisions and the big decisions. And because it's mostly subconscious and we have never learned about it and we don't know about it, some of our decisions are subconscious, driven by the time perspective. And I think it's quite useful to know if there is something navigating and forcing our decisions, we should know what it is. And that's what the talk today is about. So let me dive a bit more deeper into those backpacks and really imagine what it comprises in your life. What is it about? So what do we have the backpack with the past for? The past means your roots, your origin. It means where you come from. What is it you follow? What was there before you? Heritage, traditions, inspiration, all memories. It is your past, positive and negative memories, but it's also the past of all your ancestors. It's typical that we spend a lot of time in our past when we are old. Senior elderly people have a huge past, so they like to spend time in it, ruminating, going through the memories. And it's typical to go into the past if you want to learn from a lesson, or if you want to draw inspiration from your former areas of life or from former generations. So that's the healthy way of using your past. There are some people who are stuck in the past a little bit, and there is a vice connected to it. And the vice might be, being stuck in old habits and complain a lot. I don't know if you know people like that, but they might be slightly stuck in the past. However, you might be heavily stuck in the past, and that means it might result in depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. Typical groups of people who tend to be stuck in the past, which means they live through the past, they decide from the past, are people who survived some tough incidents or victims of crimes, or people who went through some really, really difficult times in their life, no matter if it was an individual story or a global or national experience. People who like past and who live a lot in the past, they usually like historical books and documentaries, and it's the same for books and films. So, that should be the idea for the past. If you imagine the backpack with the present, the reason why we have such backpack is because the fun and joy and pleasure and friends and celebration and the here and now lives here. So when we go to the backpack with the present, we go there to enjoy the body, the senses, relaxation, friends, all the pleasure in our life, including relaxation. So it might be the dynamic pleasure, but also the relaxing one. A typical zone in our life, typical time is the childhood. This is where we live here and now. As children, you want to have maximum pleasure and minimum difficulties. And this is something really typical for present. If you are slightly stuck in the present, the vice related to it might be eternal child. Mama hotel, living at home, staying with mama till your 40s, and party hard, spending all your money in the first week after you got it, not saving money, not being responsible. Eternal child. If the way of being stuck in the present changes into a diagnosis, it's all the addictions. Addiction to alcohol, drugs, gambling, gaming, sex, chocolate, whatever addictions you can imagine, but also poverty and social exclusion as sort of social diagnosis. Typical representatives of people being stuck in the present are either homeless people or artists. With artists, we are more tolerant because them being stuck in the present, they create amazing work of art because they dive into the present, and there is great music and great paintings. So we sort of forgive them that they are maybe not able to learn from the past or plan for the future and being responsible. With homeless people, it's a similar pattern, but because there are no interesting works of art, we don't forgive them this being stuck in the present, not being able to delay gratification and plan as easily as the artists. Typical pop culture or culture products related to present are comedies or horror movies. People stuck in the present live in a fascinating way. Imagine you live in a time bubble that goes plus minus 3 to 6 weeks. And anything that happened more than 3 to 6 weeks ago is gone, reset. You don't remember anymore. And anything that is going to happen more in the future than 3 to 6 weeks is like foggy. You're not able to see it. So you roll through your life in this bubble, and you are able to consider events that are going to influence you in the next 3 to 6 weeks, and you are able to learn or operate with stuff that happened 3 to 6 weeks ago. That's it. So if somebody tries to motivate you, or if somebody tries to make you learn from the past that is older, or if somebody tries to, tell you there will be consequences that will come later than in 6 weeks, it's like if they spoke Swahili to you, because you cannot imagine it. And that's a major issue in a society of ours that is heavily future oriented. Speaking about the future, why is it we have a backpack with the future? Well, this is where we store dreams, visions, plans, to-do lists. This is what denying gratification is for, because if you manage to delay gratification and work on something that will be relevant in the future, you will probably be successful. So future is for dreaming and creating visions, dividing them into smaller chunks, working on them, which means delaying pleasure now in order to have something better in the future, something better in terms of careers, relationships, health, or even money. Typical time zone in life where we're spending a lot of time in the future is adulthood, starting with adolescence, because in adulthood we are expected or hoping to build our life, delay gratification in order to get something. People who are slightly stuck in the future, the typical vice related is being a bit dry or boring, because you do everything as expected. You brush your teeth, you are on time, you do your work in the best possible way, you eat healthy, you sleep enough, you do everything in a very responsible way. But people might find you boring because you are so organized, and there is no place for, adventure and improvisation, a little bit of fun, which is typically related to the present time zone. However, even in the future that looks so healthy, you can be heavily stuck. And the diagnosis related to that is anxiety or burnout syndrome. And the typical group for being stuck in the future are managers, mothers, and modern fathers, which means parents. Why is that? Because managers live in the next year or next quarter, in the next maybe 5 to 10 years, planning for the company, trying to look ahead. So the body lives here and now, but in their head, in their mind, they're way ahead. The same goes for mothers or modern fathers. When a child is born, you start thinking about, oh my God, which school should I choose? Oh my God, what to do for the child in order not to become addicted to drugs? And you start living in the future and worrying about future. So that's why these diagnoses related to the future refer to these two categories. And culture products related to future orientation is sci-fi, or educational materials, books and movies. When you look at it like right now, and like this, past, present, future, it might seem like exclusive categories. They are not. Each of us has a backpack with the past, with the present, with the future. The way in which we differ is how full each backpack is, how we are able to fill it with stuff, stories, memories, content, and how good we are in moving between those backpacks and doing it in the right context. Going to the future backpack when it's useful, going to the past backpack when it's useful. And this is the core of the time perspective. A very exciting idea Zimbardo came about to describe and to discover is If there are more people with the same time perspective sharing one geographic area, is it possible that an entire nation or state could be, for instance, stuck in the past, stuck in the present, or stuck in the future? And research shows it is very much possible. It's very much so. So, what are the countries that are stuck in the past? It's usually the former empires, nations that used to be big and they are not so big anymore. And they are very sentimental about it and hoping to go back to the past. You know, it might be Turkey, it might be, in a way, UK, because the slogan of Brexit, let's make Britain great again, shows a bit of this tendency. It might be some other countries that used to be huge, like Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Some Viennese people still behave as if Sissi still lived next door as their neighbor. So this is very typical for the countries stuck in the past. Countries or places stuck in the present are typically places of fun or deep relaxation. So it might be Las Vegas, even though it's not a country, but it might be seen as a country in a country. You know, why present oriented? Because you go there to have fun and you don't really care what will be the consequences in many cases. There are no clocks on the walls of the casinos. There are no windows, so that you don't realize time passing, and you don't remember there is a family and responsibilities you have outside of the casino. Another example of countries or places being present oriented is Bali. You know, it's known as the ultimate location for relaxation and peace. But if you try to move there and live there long term, you realize some things that you would need for good functioning as a modern person are not so effective because some future orientation is missing. Countries that are future oriented, maybe stuck in the future, are success focused countries. It might be Japan, it might be the US, but it's also typical for countries that are not satisfied with what they have right now. A very typical example of why some countries might be stuck in the future is the consumerism, how much they aspire to buy new stuff and how soon the stuff they buy starts getting boring and they want something more and they want something new. And I have this car and I have a mortgage. And when I'm finished with paying it, when I'm done, I want a new car and a bigger house and bigger mortgage. And this constant looking for something better that will come in the future instead of enjoying what I have now and being grateful for having this. In Japan, this typical example for being stuck in the future is related to immense educational pressure and stress, where many kids have to enter preschools where they get prepared for university entrance exams. And already these preschools are really tough, and to enter this preschool might be really heavy. Very exotic example from Japan might be that pregnant mothers starting 6th month go visit language schools, and they enter language courses for preborn babies because it's never early enough to start preparing the children for the tough reality out there. So there are some examples of being stuck in the future. Very often it's countries who went through some difficult wars and who had to rebuild themselves very, very, very fast. So that's how their time perspective changed. There is a philosophical question. I'm not going to make a poll about it because it might be a bit more complex to answer, but think about it. Where do you think is your country? We have quite good data for the Czech Republic. So we know in the Czech Republic, the majority of people are simultaneously stuck in the past and in the future. So for the Czech Republic, we know, but I would be really curious about your guess and your estimation.
So our
Uh,
attendees can still add answers if they want to during the whole talk. I will not turn off this poll, but I think we can move forward in the presentation, please.
I'm usually used to presentations where I can interact with the audience directly. And usually at this point, when I present the first part of the time perspective theory, speaking about the backpacks, past, present, future, the function, the vices, the diagnosis, whole nations being stuck somewhere, usually there are some vivid reactions. So if you are having some questions, some clarification questions, or if you sort of disagree or if you find it difficult to accept this, just let me know through Beáta or through any other channels, because I'd like to answer your questions immediately so that you are not confused and you're able to follow this furthermore. The time perspective is not only a theory, it's a practice. It's something that should help you to get more balance in your personal life, and it should also help organizations to get more balanced. In order to do that, it's amazing to use some standardized tool. And Phil Zimbardo, this amazing American psychologist with a Sicilian background, created Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory. That should give you an overview about your personal time perspective, where you are in these time zones. In the pre-work for this talk, there were the links where you were able to take the time perspective inventory. If you did that, if you had the time, you should have the results by now, 5 figures. And I'm going to explain what they mean so that you actually understand your own results. If part of you didn't have the time or didn't find the links, please do not fill in the Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory now, because it will take like 20 minutes and you would miss the point of the talk. So focus on the explanation and maybe go back to the inventory after the talk and get your results, and you will be able to understand them. So if you have the personal results or not, let's dive into what it actually means if you get these figures. This is something called the balanced time perspective. This is what you will see at the end of the inventory after you have taken it. And I'm going to explain this to you. There are two different time zones related to the past negative and past positive. The figure related to negative past should be as low as possible. Why is that? We cannot change the past. It happened. It's done. It has happened. Now, we have the consequences, but we cannot really change it. But if you still ruminate about it, if you spend a lot of time thinking about it, if you spend a lot of time thinking about all the trauma and negative experiences, it can consume up to 30% of your life energy, which you could actually use for enjoying yourselves in the present or working on your future. But this energy is stuck in this reliving, replaying of your negative past. So what you are supposed to do, if your result is higher than plus minus 2.1, is you need to clean the negative past, work on it. How to do that? You need to heal, to forgive, to learn. The specific thing about negative past is that it's difficult to do it on your own. So therefore, if your result in this time zone is a bit higher, consider consulting a therapist, a coach, a priest, a shaman, a wise elderly person who is really smart, or a good friend, because you need to go through the negative experiences and you need to find a way how to heal, how to learn lessons, how to understand how they made you interesting, how they made you who you are right now, and learn to reframe them into something positive, a positive experience. It's not easy, but it's possible. I've been working with it in my psychological practice together with a colleague of mine, and it's very much possible, although it's really better to have a companion to help you with this. So negative past, as low as possible. Positive past, on the other hand, should be as high as possible. 3.67 is the optimal number, but if it's higher, even better. Why is that? Positive past are all the positive memories, all the gratitude, all the happiness, all the successes you can remember. And they are something like a power bank for you, which you are having with you all the time. When the present is difficult and the future is uncertain, for instance, during the COVID time, You might go back to the positive past and draw energy from that to survive, to live through the difficult times. However, you have to have it activated. You have to have the power bank recharged with you, which means you have to be good at collecting the snips and bits of the positive past, to have maybe a book of your successes, or to have somewhere pictures of happy moments, to have it close to you. Because when you enter the difficult times in the present, or when the future becomes unstable, you are not in the mood to start collecting positive snaps from the past. So you have to have it somewhere. You have to have invested time in the past to create some sort of file with these positive memories and successes and moments of gratitude, which you only open to draw inspiration from it. That's about the past. How about the figures related to the present? Present hedonism figure should be rather high, around 4.33. Why is it important? Why should you have a higher number here? Because it's where happiness lives. If you have a high positive past, if you have high future orientation, but you have very low present hedonism, you will not experience subjective happiness and well-being in your life. You will feel like, I should feel happy. I have everything I should have. I have a good work. I have nice family. I have all the objective things that should make me happy, but you're not going to feel it. And in a way, we care for subjective feeling of happiness and well-being. So working on your present hedonism is working on being happy, experiencing happiness. There are two different presents. There can be recharging present hedonism, which is all the activities that help us to recharge batteries, to renew our resources. And there is destructive present hedonism, which is like heavy alcohol consume, which is all the, sex, drugs, and rock and roll that goes beyond healthy and safe. It's adventurism, it's taking high risk, and all the things that go like way beyond what could be called renewing or recharging. Present hedonism is where mindfulness, relaxation, friendship, all bodily pleasures, joy, and good relationships live at. So that's the reason why to work on it and have it rather high. The second time perspective, time zone related to present, is present fatalism. Present fatalist. This should be as low as possible. Why is that? Because fatalism means you believe someone else is in charge of your life. You are not in charge. You are not the master of your life. So it might be God, it might be the politicians, it might be your boss, your wife, your partner, it might be destiny, or whatever other power that is in charge of your life. If you are really high on present fatalism, you will experience hopelessness, envy, difficulty to cooperate with others. There is a huge pile of research showing that people who are high in present fatalism very often feel really unhappy in their lives. Working on lowering, decreasing present fatalism might help a lot for you to feel in charge and actually really well in your own life. Let's get to the future. There are two zones in the future. And the result on the scale of your future time perspective should be moderately high, around 3.69. Why is that? If your score on future orientation is lower than 3.5, it might be difficult for you to find success in your life, because most of what we consider success is related to delaying gratification, to being able to not watch this series on Netflix and instead go and do something which you always wanted to do, clean your apartment, go and deal with some sort of bureaucracy or administration, go exercising, go gardening, and then doing what's fun, saving money, doing all the healthy and reasonable things before you do something what's fun. So if your result is rather low, you might have difficulties with health, financial stability, with getting things done, with turning visions into tangible results. People who are future oriented choose automatically duty before pleasure, and they live responsibly. It's mainly because they find the if-then relationship absolutely normal. it's easy for them to imagine, if you do this, then this will come out of it. For people who are low on future orientation, future time zone, this doesn't really make sense, the if then relationship. There is an extra inventory, an extra test for transcendental future, which Zimbardo created extra and later, and you may take it, unfortunately, in English only for Czech speakers or other speakers. But transcendental future is a time zone which relates to the future after death. So it shows you how much you focus on things that happen outside of this life. And if you take this inventory, your result should be moderately high, because it shows how much you believe that what happens after death will be the major zone or the major time of your life. It shows how much you rely on religion, how much you believe in miracles, in luck and serendipity. Moderate results, moderately high results are still okay, and you can have a balanced time perspective. Going back to this overview, I'd like to point out what balanced time perspective means, because this is what Zimbardo suggests is the ideal time perspective. Balance doesn't mean you have the same numbers everywhere. It means this curve you see here. So low, past negative, high, past positive, low, present fatalism, high, present hedonism, and high or moderately high, future. This is balanced, and we have a considerable amount of data proving that people who manage to reach this sort of balance have a very stable, resourceful life, being able to draw inspiration and learn from the past, experience good quality relationship, enjoying life, and working on strong visions, transforming them into tangible results. Even though not all of you were able to fill in the Zimbardo time perspective inventory, I'd like to know if you have some questions at this point. Because, after presenting the theory and now presenting what the good results should look like, there might be some questions on your side, both either regarding the theory or, okay, I don't understand my own figures, or how should I understand this or that? If there are any questions, just let me know. Baru, is there something I should consider, or not yet at the moment?
Right now, Danny, prosím, do reže. Right now, we have two questions. One is that if a country can be in between two packages, and then there's another question, how to lower my present fatalistic value. I wonder if you want to reply to them now, or keep it to the end. Right now, you have about 15 minutes for the rest of your presentation. So if you want to answer now, but remember about the time pressure, actually.
Yeah. Thank you. How to lower your present fatalism? The first thing Zimbardo says is work on those other time perspectives, the healthy ones. Past positive, present hedonistic, and future orientation. Even if your results are not bad, work on cultivating it and making it even better. And the second thing would be use the same helper as for a negative past, somebody you could speak about. Because sometimes if you come from a country that lived in a not democratic political regime, you have learned fatalism. You have been trained in being a fatalist, but it might no longer be the case now, living in a democracy, not living in a totalitarian regime. So apply the same you would apply for past negative. And yes, a country can be stuck in two zones simultaneously, just like Czech Republic, where many people are simultaneously stuck in positive past, believing there was some time when life was better, and simultaneously being stuck in the future, where parents try to work really, really, really hard to get a better life standard for their children, better than they used to have. So it's perfectly possible. Great questions. Thanks a lot. Okay. What should I do in case my time perspective is not balanced? There are some tips. Of course, this is the shortcut. Some tips what to do. You will probably get the presentation, so you can read it in detail. I chose 8 examples of what to do. This is from a selection of tips and tricks how to balance your time perspective I made. There are many dozens of them, but I chose some tips what to do for the increasing positive past. There are some tips for increasing present hedonism. And there are some tips for increasing your future orientation. If you want to read more about how to improve your individual time perspective, there is this amazing book Phil Zimbardo and John Boyd wrote about the time perspective. It's called The Time Paradox, and it's a moderately thick book where you can dive into these zones more in depth and work on it. Otherwise, if we were in a workshop in a company, which is where I usually do this, I would go like, okay, let's include this into your personal development plan. Let's work on it within your coaching or mentoring, or let's dive into this, which we cannot right now. If you have specific questions regarding your own time perspective, I will be in the 3D virtual world after this presentation. Save them, approach me. I'm willing to answer any of your questions and give you individualized, personalized tips and tricks. So to sum it up for you as an individual, if you want to be really stable and balanced in your life, you need to live in all 3 healthy time perspectives: positive past, present hedonism, and future orientation. But you also need to be able to switch between them when it's needed. So when you get up in the morning, you should have some present hedonistic moment, having good breakfast, maybe exercising or going for a walk, enjoying the birds singing in the garden. Then you go to work and you focus on being future oriented, getting things done, being reliable, being on time. And when you go to a family birthday celebration, or when you go to the museum, you should remember this is when I should live in the past, because this is a moment when I should celebrate that I'm part of this family, that I somehow, relate to this heritage. I'm part of a lineage of my ancestors. Or when I go to the museum, I'm here to admire the work of the ancestors of some previous generations. So this is just a reminder that living a good, balanced life doesn't only mean you should have your 3 backpacks full, but you should reach into them in the right context. And this should be also the answer. This could be the answer to the question, how about the time management in the 20th and now in the 21st century? The 21st century time management uses time perspective as a base, because if you only learn and memorize tricks from time management trainings without having your time perspective sorted out, it will not work. Let's shift the focus from an individual to an organization, because the time perspective can apply to teams and organizations. So when you look at the organizations who are past oriented, present oriented, and future oriented, you will see different patterns. So now think about your team or your company. If you are past oriented, you might experience conservative approach, hear the phrase, we have always done it this way. It might be difficult for you to innovate and accept novelties. You might be afraid to do risk things. You might be really careful about avoiding mistakes, doing things to secure that you are safe, very careful solutions, and a lot of nostalgia. This is what past stuck organizations are typical for. When I go there and I do some analysis and some diagnosis, this is how I usually recognize them. Companies or teams that are a bit stuck in the present, they are fun to stay with, fun to spend time with, because they have a lot of parties, team spirit, training, celebrations. They care a lot for status and prestige symbols, good cars, fun. They are really reactive and impulsive in decision making. Sometimes they just do things because it's a good idea without solid data and without solid analysis. And their risk taking might be seen as daring and inadequate. And very often they consider things, doing them spontaneously, without taking into consideration the consequences of the action. So they go for, oh, this is interesting, let's do that, why not do that, without calculating and looking at the risks. Future stack teams and companies, they tend to plan a lot for the future, or feel helpless about future because they see how complex future is. So they either spend all the time planning without having enough time for other things, or they feel stuck with the planning because the complexity of the future is so huge they cannot really reduce it into some tangible categories. Sometimes future stack organizations tend to have megalomaniac visions, which are the opposite of the down-to-earth approach of past stack people. And they might be really tough with people, forcing them to work hard, work long shifts, work long hours all the time to squeeze everything out of them to get some results. And these teams or companies are really typical for high numbers of burnout people or people with physical consequences of being constantly overworked. When you look
Regiezvu.
at this, when you look
So
at this,
I have just started a poll. So please, our attendees, please reply. What's the situation in your company or in your team? You can vote now, please. Thank you.
of course, this is a very simplified thing because you didn't have time to consider it carefully. I'm just really curious about your estimation. You know, this is a new concept, this is a new theory, but the fantastic thing about the time perspective is that we all understand time. You know, everybody is able to relate to the concept of time because we all live it, we all feel it, how it works for us or on us, how it influences us. So I'm just curious about how you feel about your team or your organization. You know, do you feel like being more stuck in the past, in the present, in the future, or are you the rare example of a team or a company that is balanced? Because that's fantastic. You know, that might be a sign of really great resources. I
I
hope
will
this
just
is not.
give you a few more seconds and then I will show the results. We are getting the answers right now. So maybe just a few more seconds and then I will show the results.
Okay, just to show you things to consider. Go back to the slide.
Okay, let's look at it now.
Wow. Okay.
Pretty optimistic, right?
Cool. More than a third of teams or companies are balanced. That's really cool. You know, it might not be a preventive measure that would save you from any challenges or any problems in the future, but it gives you a good basis, you know, for being healthy, not being blind or not having huge blind spots. I'm really happy it's not 99% of you who said you believe you were balanced, because I couldn't give you tips and examples of interventions we could do. And that would be a shame because, you know, it took me some years to collect them and test them and iterate them. And this is really something I would like to share with you. So, what I do in companies when we work on balancing the company. So in the past, we teach companies how to be able to reframe negative experiences into positive lessons learned. We work on increasing their ability to experience gratitude. We work more on gathering good practice and using it as lesson learns. We try to capture role models. We work on debriefing training. We train companies in good, effective, efficient debriefing. We teach them storytelling and shared history mapping so that the companies and teams are able to draw the maximum inspiration from this. Past negative is all about processing failures, being able to let go, working with errors, and, you know, cleaning the negative. With present hedonistic, we teach them how to recharge batteries, how to use rituals, and how to be more discovering and exploring. With present fatalism, we work a lot on hopelessness and courage. with positive future, we teach them how to do scenario planning for the future, how to work on vision, mission, and visualization of career paths for the future. And dealing with negative future, we try to help them to reframe the negative future into things we can actually influence, which means refocus the zone or the extent of things we consider in dealing with the company. So it's like a combo, a toolbox. And when entering a team and working with the organization, we look around and we do some diagnostics. And depending on where the team is stuck or where each department might lack some balance, we try to fill in the gaps and help the company to get more stable. So, okay. Any questions regarding the time perspective of your team or company? Because I think now it's time to answer anything you would like to ask regarding the influence of the time perspective on your company.
Režie, zvuk. Denny, zvuk.
I know this might be a bit overwhelming, a lot of information that creates more questions, but let's pick at least some that would help you to understand this concept.
So right now we don't have any more questions from the audience. So is there anything else that you're going to say, or are you going to deal with this in the 3D world?
I have some sort of closing wrap up slide that should be a sort of motivation for you guys in the audience. There are two ways how to make the best of your time, either applying the time perspective theory and practice on your personal life, or focusing on seeing and perceiving the time perspective and its balance in your team or organization. If you do so, you will get a new language. You will have a new layer of understanding your own life and the lives of people around you. And you will have a new layer of understanding what is happening in your organization. You will suddenly understand some conflicts you didn't understand before. You will understand why some teams perform better and some don't. And you will understand why in some teams there is better atmosphere and better vibration. People like to spend time with them, whereas in other teams it's not like that. So just by exploring and experiencing the time perspective concept more in depth, you might get a new added language and a new added filter that might help you to be more balanced as a person and more balanced as a team or company. And I think that's a really solid piece of psychology that is not just theory, but also a very good practice. So what I'd like to say before I say goodbye and we meet as avatars, thank you for your attention, and may your time perspective be balanced. Enjoy the rest of the conference.